Everything looked fine in that house. The dog knew it wasn't. Fletcher was not an anxious dog. That was the first thing Naomi would say later, to the fire marshal, to the pediatrician, to her mother on the phone. He is not an anxious dog, she would say this, in the specific way people say things that are meant to explain something without explaining anything. Fletcher was a 4-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog, 105 pounds of deliberate calm. He did not startle. He did not pace. He had moved through 18 months of new baby chaos, the screaming, the midnight chaos, the strangers in and out, with the composure of an animal that had decided early that none of this required a reaction from him. So when he started circling Avery's room, Naomi did not immediately know what to call it. Avery was 9 months old, round-faced, recently starting to pull herself up on anything within reach. She had a cold that week. Mild, the kind that produces extra fussiness, and not much else. Monday evening, Naomi put her down at 7 p.m. and watched on the monitor as she settled. Normal. Expected. Fletcher did not come to bed. He went to the hallway outside Avery's room and lay down in front of the door. Naomi found him there at 10 p.m. when she got up for water. "Fletch, come on!" He looked at her and did not move. She assumed he was being sentimental. He had done this occasionally in Avery's first weeks home, stationed himself near the nursery. She left him. At midnight, he was still there. At 2 a.m., Naomi woke to a sound she couldn't place and found Fletcher standing now, not lying, standing in the hallway, nose pressed to the gap under Avery's door, inhaling slowly and steadily. His body was taut in a way she had not seen before. She opened the door. Fletcher moved past her immediately. Both paws on the crib rail, nose over the side, pressed toward Avery's face. Avery stirred, but didn't wake. Fletcher exhaled once, pulled back, inhaled again. The room smelled faintly of something Naomi couldn't name. Not gas, not the sharp sulfur smell they added to natural gas. Something underneath that. Sweet, slightly wrong. She stood in the room for a moment. Her husband, Garrett, had gone to his sister's for the week. A work thing, 2 states away. Naomi was alone with Avery and a 105-pound dog who had just done something in 11 seconds that she had never seen him do in 4 years. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. She picked Avery up and took her to the living room. Fletcher followed, positioned himself between her and the hallway, and stayed there for the rest of the night. Not sleeping, not moving. The specific stillness of focused attention. By morning, Naomi felt a headache, mild, the kind she might have attributed to poor sleep. Avery was fussier than usual. The faint smell in the nursery was gone, or she couldn't find it anymore. And she stood in the doorway with Fletcher pressed against her leg and told herself she had imagined it. She called Garrett. She called the gas company. The technician arrived Tuesday afternoon. A man named Earl Stokes, 23 years in utility services. He spent 14 minutes in the house and then walked out to the front porch and stood with his tablet and said, "Ma'am, you need to not go back in there until we've completed a full assessment." The furnace heat exchanger had a crack in it. Hairline? Invisible? The kind that develops over years in older units and allows combustion gases to enter the living air supply at concentrations below the threshold of most residential CO detectors, concentrations that build slowly over hours of nighttime operation. Pooling in lower areas of the house, areas like a nursery with a crib positioned near the floor vent. The level measured in Avery's room after 2 hours of furnace operation that Tuesday, 68 parts per million. The threshold at which an infant's neurological system begins to register stress. 35. Earl Stokes looked at Fletcher, who had come out onto the porch with them and was sitting beside Naomi's leg. He said, "That's a good dog." Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The fire marshal, who followed up 2 days later, was a woman named Captain Diane Reyes. She told Naomi that carbon monoxide poisoning in infants presents as increased fussiness, disrupted sleep, and lethargy, symptoms identical to a mild cold or teething. The dog was registering a chemical shift in the air of that room before your detector threshold was reached, she said. Dogs can detect CO at concentrations below 5 parts per million. Your detector would have triggered at 70. She paused and looked at Fletcher. What made you take it seriously when he wouldn't move? Naomi thought about it for a moment. He's not an anxious dog, she said. Captain Reyes nodded. The ones who aren't anxious, those are the ones worth listening to. They replaced the furnace that week. The new unit sat in the basement, silent, efficient. Naomi had 2 additional CO detectors installed, one in the hallway, one in Avery's room at crib height. Fletcher went back to sleeping at the foot of the bed, where he had always slept. The midnight vigils in the hallway stopped. The circling stopped. He was calm again in the specific, unremarkable way he had always been calm, as if none of it had happened, as if he had simply done a job and put it down. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Naomi sat in the repaired nursery on a Thursday afternoon with Avery in her arms and Fletcher lying across the rug in the low afternoon light. She thought about the gap under the door, the nose pressed into that thin line of air, the systematic way he had inhaled, not panicking, not performing, reading. He had been reading a number the detectors couldn't find. He had communicated it in the only language available to him. And she had listened to the one part of that communication she understood, the unusual behavior, and not known yet what it meant. She was glad she had listened to that much. The next story involves a dog who started behaving differently around one family member weeks before anyone else noticed what was changing.